to be honest, it all started with I think it was a Christian Vasquez grand slam against the Braves. What's going on, everybody? My name is Dillard, and we're coming back at you with another podcast. Now, on my second channel, we haven't done a podcast in quite some time. You may not be used to the new guest that I have today because my co-host, Clemente, unfortunately is dealing with an ear infection, but he will be back soon. So in the meantime, we're going to have a guest. You want to go ahead and tell us who you are and kind of what you do throughout the season? I know you talked a little bit before this podcast started about a radio station.
Oh, yeah. Nobody knows me ahead of time. My name's James Kelly. I work at Elite Sports New York, the Gary Age Show on cavetalkradio.com. I do a podcast with Allison Case called Bleacher Creatures, which we very much enjoy doing. And I pretty much just anywhere where you can find written word, I'm at least trying to get a job there. So that's all me and all my career accomplishments thus far.
So how old are you, or are you in college right now?
Oh, I'm 26. I'm grown now. Watching the young kids come up and do what I did like 4 years ago. Realizing I have not really gotten all that far from it. And I don't care. It's fun. It's fun to do podcasts like this where it's just very casual and very conversational.
Yeah, especially if it's a podcast with people who know what they're doing more so, and they've been kind of doing this more, so you kind of just follow their lead or whatnot. And
absolutely.
Obviously you're very big into baseball, so that's probably what we should talk about, which is just talk about anything in general. I think probably the most important thing for us to probably talk about, and what I jotted down a whole bunch of notes, probably way too many notes. We probably won't get through all of it. That's fine. I over prepare for everything that I do. But talk about some just division leaders and then maybe wild card predictions. I don't know if you've done any of these yet. I've seen them all over Twitter. Some are, I'm not going to give too harsh opinions, but there have been some that are like very questionable. Some that are like, are you trolling? Like, there's no way this team's even going to sniff the playoffs. But again, it is baseball. It's unpredictable. I could make this prediction and then it could be completely wrong. So do you want to give us kind of your predictions on the division winners first for the AL and the NL, if you have them?
Yeah, let's start with division winners. And we'll start with the AL East because, I'm a Yankees guy. And I hate going against the Rays because the Rays are always going to be the Rays no matter who they are. They just traded Austin Meadows and they called up their number 2 overall prospect, Josh Lowe. So of course, like, that guy's going to be a thorn in the Yankees side all year, just because that's how it works. But what the Blue Jays did this offseason was nothing short of incredible. They really opened up the piggy bank. They got everybody they wanted. They have put together probably one of the most complete teams in the entire league. The only real weakness I see is that their middle relievers aren't exceptional. But you saw the emergence of Jordan Romano last year as the closer. That was something that, going into the year, you were looking at the Toronto Blue Jays and be like, all right, get Robbie Ray out of the game and we're going to be fine. We're going to be just fine today because they have no relievers, kind of the way you also look at the Red Sox this year. But for the Blue Jays, they have fixed all of their problems except maybe bullpen depth. They have one of the best offenses last year. They're going to have one of the best offenses again this year. That's without a doubt. They shored up some infield defense. I know Bo Bichette isn't phenomenal defensively. He's very flashy, but the numbers don't really say like, oh yeah, like this guy is a Gold Glover. So having Matt Chapman next to him, that only will that make the infield defense a lot better on its own, but it's also going to give Bo Bichette a lot of cover, I think, to maybe, he doesn't have to extend that range too far to the right side for him. He doesn't have to go that far anymore. He can just kind of make the plays that come to him and know that Matt Chapman's going to scoop up about everything else. So I think the Blue Jays are probably my favorite to win the division. And I know I saw a few projections today that had the Blue Jays, Rays, Red Sox, and Yankees all winning 88 games. That would be a little shocking to me, considering all 4 of those teams won 90 games last year. To dip down to 88, I think you're over assuming how badly they're going to beat up on each other. But the Blue Jays for sure, I think in the AL East probably are my preseason favorite. And I'd probably put the Rays second and the Yankees third, with the Red Sox fourth, because obviously the Orioles are last. That's not it. If there was a team that I had to pinpoint and say, yeah, no, that one doesn't have a chance, it would be the Baltimore Orioles. For the AL Central, I think it's the White Sox division to lose. The Guardians are interesting. Extending J-Ram, they have their pitching staff pretty much in order. Emmanuel Clase is going to be their closer, and he's nasty. I wonder if they're going to be able to get James Karinchak back into form, because towards the end of last year he kind of fell apart, and that's a big part for them, their bullpen, because it's not very deep. It's not very deep over there. So they'll be interesting. I think Pesky, will they compete for a wild card spot? I don't think so. I think maybe all 3 spots will come from the AL East. I think there's a good possibility. Or if you look at the AL West, you know, the Angels and Astros and Mariners all have a very legitimate shot at the AL West title. And you could very well see, you know, the Mariners weren't that far off from the playoffs last year. They were very close, and they only got better. Julio Rodriguez he's got that kind of Nelson Cruz vibe for me, where you hear the bat and the ball connect, and it's just a little bit different. It's a little bit different than everybody else's. So I'm really excited to see him. A full year of Kelenic. He got the rookie stuff out of the way. Hopefully he, you know, gets it going a little bit, because if I had $1 for every show I went on and said, give me one reason why Jared Kelenic isn't on the major league roster right now when talking about service time manipulation, I would be a very rich man and I wouldn't have to worry about anything. And of course he had a terrible year last year. So I think I like the Mariners to win the AL West, with Correa departing from Houston. The Twins will also be competitive, to say the least. I'm not in love with their pitching staff, but Joe Ryan is interesting. Bailey Ober is interesting. Sonny Gray has looked fantastic this year and has been fantastic for a couple years since leaving the Yankees. So that was clearly just not a good situation for him. So the Twins will be interesting. I'd like to see if maybe the Tigers can get something going with Spencer Torkelson as a rookie of the year candidate. Again, another team that's going to be pesky, but I wouldn't expect them to really give the White Sox a run for their money. So yeah, if I had to narrow it down, I'd probably say the Blue Jays, the White Sox, and the Mariners come out on top this year.
I like everything. I mean, pretty much everything that I was going to talk about. You hit the nail on the coffin. I'm like, I mean, you did tell me before this podcast you knew what you were talking about, and I trusted you, and obviously you're correct about that, so that's definitely nice to know. But pretty much the same. Obviously the Blue Jays, I mean, I don't really have to talk about their offensive capabilities. Everybody knows how dangerous they are. You know, George Springer, Bo Bichette, Guerrero Jr. I actually we'll talk about it later on, but Guerrero Jr., I actually have him winning American League MVP because...
I do too.
And it's not, a lot of people have been like, well, what about Ohtani? And it's not like I dislike Ohtani. If I could have it any other way, I want Ohtani to win MVP again and again and again, just because I love what he's doing. I mean, we haven't seen this kind of work since Babe Ruth, so none of us have seen this ever in our history, you know? So it's something very special what Ohtani's doing. But I think I decided to give it to, you know, Guerrero Jr. just because I don't know if Ohtani at that kind of high level of play will be able to sustain it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, what we saw last year, we saw last year from Shohei Ohtani was special. I mean, that's the perfect word to describe it. And do I think he's going to go back to 2019 Shohei Ohtani, who looks like he can only do one of the two things and not both? No, absolutely not. I think this is very much the player that he's going to be. Is he going to lead the league in home runs this year? Probably not. I don't think so. Is he going to win the Cy Young? Probably not. I don't think so. And there's going to be a little bit of voter fatigue, I think, if Shohei really just repeats what he did last year. And people are going to look at Vladdy, who, again, lost 30 more pounds this year. The whole reason that he had such a good year last year is because he dropped so much weight in the offseason. And this offseason, he drops another 30 pounds. He's going to be a problem. He's going to be a real problem. And I think Vladdy probably wins it this year. And I think he puts up numbers. I think he has a better chance of putting up numbers that are similar to what he did last year than Shohei Ohtani does. Because last year, again, for Ohtani was just special. Yeah, and it all comes down just to, can Ohtani do it again? It's not that people are necessarily saying that he can't do it. It's just we've never seen it happen to begin with once. Can we see it again twice? 3 times to follow, 4 times, you know what I mean? Like, can the cycle continue? Is he really this type of legendary player that we might never see again? Yeah. You know, obviously most people are probably thinking, unless you're in the AL West where you have to deal with Ohtani on a regular basis, but most casual baseball fans, most baseball fans in general, would like to see him continue to do this for obvious reasons. I mean, if you don't, I don't understand why you wouldn't. I think you'd be living under a rock. I think, in my opinion, if you don't want him to continue this, you're just a hater. But, I mean, I just can't find any reasonable excuse why people wouldn't want him to continue the type of success that he's having. But to kind of go back to the Blue Jays, you know, Blue Jays, I don't really need to say too much other than that. With their offense is amazing. Obviously, the big question mark is their bullpen. Can it be sustainable for
not just 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, but the whole season, 162 games. Obviously, the starting pitching. Some of the people that I named off in this little document I wrote was obviously Kevin Gossman's important. He had a good season with the Giants. Kikuchi, definitely interesting. I know a lot of people have given Kikuchi a little grief, but I've liked a lot of things that I've seen from Kikuchi when he was with the Mariners. And then, obviously, Matt Chapman. We talked before the podcast. Dallas Braden last season bought me an Athletics Chapman jersey. I'm a big Chapman fan. I even made a video on this channel that talked about, is Chapman better than Arenado? So that's actually, if that doesn't tell you how much I like Chapman, then I don't know what would. But definitely Chapman. I think the one concern for him is, can he get back to where he was in 2018, 2019 with his offense? I think he can. I think after coming back from the injury, I think it was the hip injury that he sustained in the 2020 season. I think he'll come back from that strong. His projections, if I'm not mistaken, are around 115, 120 WRC plus season, which I'd actually think that he could have higher numbers. I think he'd get back to that 2018, 2019 form where it's like a 130. And then if he can get back to that level, not to mention with the elite glove that he has, I mean, really one of the only defenders I can think of off the top of my head that is better than him, and it's not even close, like it's crazy how good he is Andrelton Simmons. That is the only guy that I can think of off the top of my head that is better than Chapman. As far as third baseman is concerned, not saying Chapman steamrolls Arenado, because Arenado is still very good. I mean, Arenado has him beat in outs above average in like the last 4 or 5 seasons. But Chapman does have more defensive runs saved than Arenado and has a higher ultimate zone rating in less innings. So that speaks volumes about Chapman, his range, just how amazing of a defender he is and his capabilities. So if he can get that bat back up, he is going to be a thorn for, I mean, you know this as well as I do. He's going to be a thorn for Yankees fans, not just to pitch to the guy, but to also, he's just going to raw everything if you nail it at the hot corner. I mean, you're going to have, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, these guys hitting 120, 150 mile per hour rockets just to get it past Chapman, just because his range. And I mean, he's just such a unique defender. I love Chapman. He's incredible. Talk about some of the other teams just briefly. I think for the division in the Central, I had the White Sox winning it. I relatively don't think it's going to be that close. Obviously, there's teams that I
don't think so either.
I'm interested in some teams like Tigers. Obviously, Badu is one of those guys I'm going to watch constantly. Obviously, they have Baez too that they signed. Some other teams like the Royals. Obviously, I am very interested in Bobby Witt Jr. That's going to be very interesting to see what he can do. Another question mark that I have, can Salvador Perez remotely produce the same season that he had? I don't know. I mean, it's very possible. I know a lot of people are saying that just because of that season alone, he's like a top 3 catcher. I don't think I would go that far because his defense isn't great, but he has a good bat. Some of the other things that I would like to mention with the AL West is, I think you said the Mariners. You'd have the Mariners win, correct?
Yeah, but that's definitely the only one I'm looking at and being like, you know what, like even the Texas Rangers could maybe get a little frisky towards the end of the year and put themselves in the conversation. That's very much wide open. And the Astros getting Justin Verlander back, that's huge for them. Their pitching staff is very young. And I love Luis Garcia. I think he's fantastic. And Jose Urquidy and Christian Javier was very good last year. They have a great young pitching staff, but having Justin Verlander to be like, this is the face, this is the ace, this is the guy who's coming back. And he's looked very good since coming back from the injury too. And the velocity has looked fine. They can probably withstand the loss of Carlos Correa. The offense was never going to be a problem for them. Yordan Alvarez was the best hitter on the team last year anyway. Who needs Carlos Correa?
Yeah. And it's actually interesting that you mentioned Verlander, because I was going to say his velocity, his fastball velocity has looked incredible. And you know that's a scary sight because of the fact that in like the last few years or so, Verlander has transitioned more from a blow it past you type of pitcher to a finesse pitcher. His value and his slider has went dramatically up compared to his fastball. So if his slider continues to stay at that type of value and his fastball just keeps continuing to be where it was at, and the value keeps going up and the velocity keeps going up, Verlander, he's not going anywhere anytime soon.
He's a problem.
He's going to always be a problem. But outside of that, I will say this. I think for chaos purposes, the Mariners would be perfect. I think that would bring
That's
a
my
lot of
favorite one.
chaos.
That's my favorite one. Like, I just want them to win. I want them to be the ones to do it. And I don't want anybody saying down the line, like, oh, well, the Mariners only got in because of the expanded playoffs. Like, no, I want a clean division win for the Seattle Mariners.
Yeah, that would make Twitter blow up. Like, social media would go insane. I'm here for it, especially Mariners fans. Fun fact: my history teacher in high school, shout out to him, one of my favorite teachers of all time throughout school. Massive Mariners fan. I'd always give him grief about the Mariners, and because of that, he would always make me run extra laps. So that's kind of a funny story. But yeah, I genuinely like the Mariners. Their fans are amazing. The team is very likable. Just how they run their organization. Yeah, definitely the Mariners just for some chaos. But realistically for me, I think it will be closer than people expect it to. But I think I still have to go with the Astros. I know they lost Correa, and that's a very important piece. And we'll talk about that a little bit because I honestly don't see Correa staying the whole 3 years in Minnesota, to be honest with you. There's just
no chance on earth.
But losing Correa is definitely, it is a significant impact, but I don't think it's going to stop them from doing what they've been doing. I mean, Kyle Tucker's really good, outside of the people who said Kyle Tucker's better than Aaron Judge, which is just absolutely false. But besides that, you got Kyle Tucker, Babe Alvarez. I mean, the dude is crazy, just hits jacks every day it seems like. And then obviously the pitching staff, you have Verlander, the ace, he's always going to be good. You can always rely on him. The Astros are also kind of a bona fide squad in the sense that they continue to go to the postseason, so they're very familiar with that. They are a very good team when it comes to just regular season performance. I mean, obviously every team has their bumps and bruises. You have your mountains and valleys, but the Astros are always, and they've been one of the most consistent teams for a while now. I mean, I would say at least since 2017, 2016 period, they've been one of the most consistent teams in the regular season. And I still think they just have enough firepower. They have enough in the tank to make a deep postseason push. Not saying they're going to win the World Series. I mean, anything's possible. Except for the Baltimore Orioles, they're not winning the World Series. I think
Pittsburgh Pirates will throw them in too.
I think they had like a 0% chance on Fangraphs. I'm like, poor Orioles fans, that's so rough. But yeah, I don't know if the Astros will win the World Series, but I still think that they'll win the division. I do think that there are clearly better teams in the division, such as the Blue Jays. I mean, if you said that the Blue Jays were your favorites to go to the World Series, I really wouldn't be surprised because of their offense alone, and I think that their starting pitching will be enough. It's just about the bullpen. That's really the only question mark. So,
yeah,
other
that's
than
huge
that,
in October, the bullpen especially.
Yeah. So, now that we've kind of discussed the AL division winners, what would you say are the AL wildcard winners?
Ooh. Yeah, again, if you want to, we can do the AL West, and you can throw either the Astros, the Angels, or the Mariners into that second spot. Whoever doesn't win, I think that's more than fair, and I think all three of those teams are going to kind of hover around 90 wins. I could see the Astros maybe getting up towards 95. I don't know if that would be everything going right for the Astros, and I think one interesting thing about them is could they move Alex Bregman to shortstop, because it's easier to replace a third baseman than an elite shortstop. So I'd like to see how they handle that, and maybe you could see a future where they win 95 and they win the division. But the Mariners and the Angels, I would expect to be right on their heels around that 88 to 91 range, and I could see one of them snagging one of those division spots. But then again, it could just be three teams from the AL East. It just could be whoever doesn't win. Let's say the Blue Jays win. It just could be the Rays, Red Sox, and I'm blanking now. Rays, Red Sox, and the Yankees. My own team. Forgot my own team. It just could be those three, like it was last year with the Yankees and the Red Sox. And guess what? The Blue Jays were the next team up. That was it. If we had this format last year, it would have been Rays, Yankees, Red Sox, and Blue Jays. So that could happen again. But I do think Seattle is better this year than they were last year, as are the Blue Jays. And I know the Red Sox got Trevor Story, and that's huge for them, but their pitching is a concern. They lose Eduardo Rodriguez, who was probably the most stable arm that they had. Nathan Eovaldi can be hit or miss. We know that from Yankee land, that Nathan Eovaldi can have some of those blow-up starts, but typically he's good for that quality start, 6 innings, 3 or less. But beyond that, I mean, they're going to try Tanner Houck. They're going to try Garrett Whitlock as a starter. it's a lot of question marks. And every guy you take out of the bullpen and try to convince him to be a starter, like Garrett Whitlock, who was one of the best relievers in baseball last year, guess what? You don't have him in the bullpen anymore. Who's closing games for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I pretty much agree with you. Obviously, I think that it could be the Angels. It could obviously be the Mariners. I think that they will be battling it out with the Astros. But like you said, it could very well be 4 teams that make the playoffs: the Blue Jays, Yankees, Red Sox, and Rays. And there have been a lot of people on Twitter that are like, "There's no way that's going to happen." You know, there's no way.
It would have last year.
Teams.
It would have.
But yeah, like you said, it would have happened last year if this current format was last year. So I don't see why it's such a strange concept that all 4 of these teams could all make the postseason, considering all 4 of these teams are going to have winning records. I mean, even with the Red Sox, like you said, you mentioned all the question marks. You hit the nail in the coffin. There's a lot of question marks with the Red Sox, but they're still one of those teams that I just don't see them having a 500 or below record. I mean,
and they still have that offense too, that elite offense. And Rafael Devers looks like, this is the year that he cements himself as a superstar, like for good, for going forward. He already declined an extension with the Red Sox because it wasn't even close to the money. So like, he's in that mindset already. He knows what he is, and he's gotten even better defensively at third base. When he first came up, he was a disaster defensively at third, and last year he was pretty much league average, maybe a little below league average, but he has made huge strides there, and we know what he can do offensively. And just adding Trevor Story into the mix, I think Boston is maybe the best place that he could have gone besides staying in Coors Field for offense. And you're going to see those splits, the home road splits, start to stabilize, and you're going to find out what player he really is. And I think, putting him at second base not only sets you up to extend Xander Bogaerts long term after the end of the season, but it gives you an elite second baseman, and there really aren't that many of those in the game. Second base is not an offensively dominant position. So when you do have a guy like Trevor Story, that makes a difference. And JD Martinez is no joke, obviously. And, you see what you get from Kike Hernandez over a whole year. He has stretches where he looks like a very complete hitter, but he'll also have stretches where he just isn't that. He'll give you a tough at bat, but he's not producing offense. So you can't sleep on the Red Sox offense. That's the end of discussion right there. The pitching, it is what it is. The bullpen, it is what it is. But the offense can carry them through a lot of games, and they can carry them to that 90-win mark that they got to last year to get into the postseason.
And that's kind of the thing that I've always had in the back of my mind is that, okay, don't sleep on the Red Sox. Don't sleep on the Red Sox because of what they did last year. I mean, I don't think most people, even most Red Sox fans, were expecting the team to go all the way to the ALCS and compete as far as they did with the Astros. I mean, their offense, like you said, is no joke. JD Martinez, Xander Bogaerts, Rafael Devers. It's very interesting. I actually mentioned this on Twitter. I want to know what that extension was. I want to know how much that extension was worth from the Red Sox. And I get the sense from Twitter too, and I don't blame them because I know a lot of Yankee fans too, including myself and you, are very nervous and very concerned about the Judge extension. But with Devers, a lot of Red Sox fans are like, come on, like, why can't we have a lot of our homegrown talent stay here? Like, why do they always have to go somewhere else? So, Devers, honestly, it'd be a really, really silly move for the Red Sox not to extend him. They really don't have any reason not to extend him. I don't know why they wouldn't be able to. And quite frankly, at this point with his value, I think he's worth quite a bit of money, and he deserves that. And like you said, the only problem with Devers' game for a while in his career has been the defense. It's always been the defense that was the biggest question mark. But he's dramatically improved that, and if he can continue improving that while getting better as a hitter, or at least staying where he's at right now, he's gonna make a lot of money in free agency.
You're talking about a guy who's one good year away from being in the MVP conversation regularly. That's the kind of talent that you're dealing with Rafael Devers. And I would expect his extension to be somewhere in like the $250 million range. I don't know what they want to do with years, buying out arbitration years. Maybe they'd keep it so he's still a free agent before 30, because he is so young. He is another one of those guys like we were talking about before, like the Sotos and Acuñas who came up at 19 years old, and now you just assume that every top prospect like Jason Dominguez is just going to be, ready to be an MVP at 19 years old. Like, no, it doesn't always work like that. It doesn't, but sometimes it does. And when it does, you get to make that like Ozzie Albies, Ronald Acuña Jr. contract where it's like, we're going to buy out all your arbitration years, and we're going to do it at a discount because we're going to give you like guaranteed money. And we're only really going to buy 2 years of your free agency. So you're going to get more money. We're going to get to save on the talent that we're getting from you. It's a win-win for both sides, except, you know, when you turn 29 and you have to go to free agency again. And, oh, well, all of a sudden you're looking for that 11th, 12th year. I don't know if we're going to be the ones to give it to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of the Braves in general, always, that contract is brutal. I mean,
it looks more absurd every year. And Matt Olson's contract was also absurd, and even to an extent today, Jose Ramirez's contract was a steal for sure. But the Braves just keep getting away with it over and over. Acuna, Albies, Olson, like these are the most team-friendly deals I've ever seen. What does Ozzy make? $10 million a year?
Let me look that up real quick. I think that's something.
Yeah, I have to know.
That is worth looking up.
Because every time I look at it, because every year the value goes up for players like this, and Ozzy Albies gets even better. And every year I look at it, and I'm like, how did they sign this guy to this contract?
7 years, $35 million.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's not even a clean $10 million a year. It's so much less. Like, how did they do it? How did they do it? I don't know. And why did Ozzy Albies' agent be like, hey man, why don't you just bet on yourself for a couple of years?
He literally, in the 2021 season, that season alone was worth around $33 million. And the contract is just, it's crazy. Albie should have never taken that kind of contract. He deserves so much more money than that. It's crazy.
No, and the whole thing was that they got him so young, and like we're saying, yeah, we gave you like, we're buying out a lot of like minimum years and low arbitration years, and we're getting the value like on the back end when you should be making like 20 million, you're going to be making 7 million, and you'll still be a free agent really early, so you can go again. But like, how did that work with Matt Olson? Matt Olson is almost a free agent. Like he knows what he's worth. He's been in the league. He knows how good he is. And if you're looking for a replacement for Freddie Freeman too, you couldn't have done any better than Matt Olson. And he's like, yeah, like I'll sign this very team friendly deal. But he just came from Oakland. He's like, I didn't even know you guys had that much money in baseball.
That's so bad. But it's so true though, just because it seems like Oakland A fans, all they have to look forward to is, oh, we're going to shop off this guy. Oh, we're going to shop off another talented player. Here comes another one. And then next thing you know, your whole entire team is completely scattered across the entire league. It's such a shame for Athletics fans. I feel so bad for them because I've always really liked watching the Athletics. I mean, they've had a pretty good team for quite some time with, Olsen and then Chapman and then these other kind of surprise names like, Sean Murphy and other players like that. So they've always had a lot of talent, just like they are completely unwilling to do anything when it comes to signing their players. They just absolutely refuse. So it's unfortunate for Athletics fans. I feel for them a lot. Speaking about the division winners, what would be your division winners for the National League?
Oh, National League, yeah. I really want to pick the Mets for the NL East. I really want to, but I'm a New York guy. I've seen the way that this bad energy just surrounds the Mets at all times, and it's just there's something about them that it doesn't click. It's like a team like the Padres where it's just like it just doesn't work. You're never like actually going to get there no matter how good you are. And when you look at the Mets on paper, you say, wow, like, this team is incredible. First of all, Jacob deGrom, and I know he's injured now, but hopefully he will be back at some point this year. But even you back him up with Max Scherzer, okay, well, he's got kind of a tight hamstring. That's not great. Taijuan Walker, you kind of find him. I always loved Taijuan Walker. I really wanted Taijuan Walker on the Yankees last year. And you kind of just find him and you stumble upon the best year of his career. It's like, okay, well, now Taijuan Walker's a little banged up. Like they have the kind of injury luck that the Yankees had in 2018 and 2019 when you had that next man up mentality. And, we're running out Cameron Maybin and Jake Cave way back when. It's like, these guys this is not the Yankees right now. This looks like the 2013 Yankees when you had Vernon Wells hitting cleanup. That's what we look like right now. And that's just that's just how it happens with the Mets. And, Francisco Lindor was underwhelming last year. Part of it was a little bit of unluck with batted balls, but a lot of it was just underperformance. Dom Smith was a guy who, I identified pretty early as someone who was hitting into more bad luck than really anyone else on the team, because you look at his splits and it's like, all right, well, the launch angle is pretty consistent with his good years. The average exit velocity is pretty consistent with his good years. He's not whiffing more. He's not striking out more. Like, what's the problem? And you look at BABIP and you say, all right, like, that's the problem. So you can bet on a bounce back from Dom Smith, but now you really don't really have somewhere to play him, because you have to play Robinson Cano at first base and even second base sometimes, but primarily he's going to be a DH. That's what he's going to be, because you're not going to take Pete Alonso out. Pete Alonso has had great health. He's a great player. So he's going to be playing first base every day. Robinson Cano can't play second base every day. So how do you get Dom Smith at bats at DH or in left or right field when you have Brandon Nimmo and Mark Canha? You don't, and you don't get him regular at bats, and you're kind of wasting this asset. If you're the Mets, that you have a great asset in Dom Smith and you have nowhere to put him. You have nowhere to get him in the lineup. So I think, over the course of a season, I think the Mets probably look good by the numbers, by the record. But I also look at the Braves and I say, okay, they're getting Soroka back. Max Fried was incredible last year. Charlie Moore, like, you have all these guys on the Braves, and you replace Freddie Freeman, the heart of the city, with Matt Olson. He's fine. Matt Olson, I wanted Matt Olson on the Yankees. I wanted Matt Olson pretty much anywhere, because he is a fantastic player. And we know for Yankee Stadium, if you're talking about a tailor-made swing, a guy who hits fly balls and pulls all of them, like, that's Matt Olson right there, and great first base defense. Obviously, we end up with Anthony Rizzo. But when you're looking at the offs, saying, all right, well, what's the weak spot in this lineup? There really isn't one. You could look at Dansby Swanson and say, all right, like, he hasn't been a superstar, but defensively he's great, and he's just about average offensively. That's all we really need. And the pitching staff is incredible. You saw what the bullpen did last year in the playoffs, and even still, Luke Jackson, who was their best reliever all year, was terrible in the postseason last year. He was terrible. So you look at the Braves and say, that's a complete team. That's a complete team that just is coming off a World Series. I would probably pick them to win the NL East.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think there's kind of a strange stigma that people believe that the Braves are not going to be as competitive again. And the one divining factor that I always say to them is, you do realize that the Braves won the World Series without their biggest superstar, arguably one of the
Acuna,
best players
you forget
in the
about
league.
that.
Yeah.
You forget about that. And it's like, you're not going to get what you got from Eddie Rosario. That's not going to happen in the postseason. Like, Eddie Rosario went on an incredible run, and it leads you to believe, like, yes, maybe the playoffs are a little bit of a crapshoot. Like, Eddie Rosario is the definition of an average hitter. There's not a player in baseball who is more average than Eddie Rosario, but he gets hot at the right time, and it changes everything for you. And when you add Acuna back into that mix and you bring Mike Soroka back into that mix, you've just added two all-star caliber players. And with Acuna, that's an MVP caliber player for nothing. They were already on the team. They just weren't playing. The Braves for the NL East. And I think the Mets do make the playoffs. I think they probably get one of the wild card spots.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was going to say, obviously, Braves. I pretty much agree with you on that. Braves completely. I don't really think that needs to be argued. The problem with the Mets is Jacob deGrom, obviously. The health. Obviously, we know when he's healthy, undisputedly, the best pitcher in baseball. That doesn't need to be argued. Unless you're using pitching wins, which at that point, I'm not even going to talk to you if you're using pitching wins. I cannot stand people use pitching wins as a definitive stat for pitchers when it means nothing. But also, how long can they keep it going? I mean, they've had injury problems for so long, kind of like how you mentioned with the Yankees. And I was going to say, by the way, the 2019 Yankee season, it seemed like it wasn't the New York Yankees. What it really was the Scranton Rail Riders.
That's exactly what it was. It was everybody. It was everybody. It wasn't like, we lost Stanton, so we got to bring up replacements. Like, no, Judge is out. Stanton is out. Fucking Sabathia is out. Like, everybody on the roster was injured, and they still found a way to win a lot of games, and that was great. And you discovered Gio Urshela, who, it was a good move for the Yankees to get rid of him. He really, I didn't expect much from him this year. After seeing last year, he kind of reverted back to form as an average league hitter. I am going to miss Gary Sanchez, because I always believed that at some point he would kind of figure out how to stabilize his offensive production, because that week where Gary Sanchez carries the offense by himself, that's a fun week. That's a fun week for everyone involved. But then it's always followed by a 3-week stretch where he's an absolute zero at the plate. So I hope he's good in Minnesota. But when you're looking at those teams, it's like, all right, like no Gary, no Judge, no Stanton. Like, where is the offense going to come from? And it just came. It just came. That's not what it's going to be like with the Mets, though. There's no one coming behind Jacob deGrom who's just going to be like, okay, like, I guess I'm the superstar of the team now. Like, that's just not going to happen. And it sucks because I feel like we're looking at Jacob deGrom and saying, you know, you can make an argument that right now he is the most dominant pitcher of all time. Not that he's the best and that, you know, he hasn't had this long career. He got into the league late. It took a couple years for him to really establish himself. But when he's been healthy over the last 3 or 4 years, you're looking at him and saying, all right, I have never seen anybody do anything like this. It's Bob Gibson level where it's like, do we have to change the mound? Like, is this just not fair for everybody else to have this guy out here? And the one thing that has always concerned me was that, man, he's a skinny guy. There's not a lot of mass on him, and he throws 101 so often. I think if you look at the number of 100-mile-per-hour pitches thrown by starters over the last season, I think Jacob deGrom he must have had like 50 to everybody else's like 10. Like that's how good he was, but he is skinny and he is always injured. It always worries me because mass equals gas.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's just a lot of question marks, and it's not that the Mets don't look good on paper, because they absolutely do. It's all about the health and can they stay healthy, and it also just seems to be this like bad juju effect.
Yeah.
That like every time everybody predicts that this is gonna be the year the Mets are gonna win the postseason, or they're gonna win the division and then go to the postseason and then make a deep postseason push. And it seems like it's not even just Mets fans. It's been a lot of people saying that they'll do this because of the fact that they look good on paper. But year after year after year, they just fall short. And not even just fall short. It's like the wagon completely falls off the wheels. They just burst into flames. And they can't recover back from it. We've seen it so many years where they might have a good start. You know, they may be the World Series champions in April. They might continue that into May. But especially once they get to like the second half of the season, it just seems like the tires completely pop with that team. So I am very excited for Max Scherzer, but it's like, again, it's that bad juju effect. It's like, and there was that news with Max Scherzer possibly not starting soon, like having an injury. It's like, I just don't understand what happens within the Mets organization where it's like players that have never played for the organization dip to New York and then they just become injured, or suddenly there's an issue.
K-Rod. It's literally K-Rod. K-Rod was one of the best relievers in baseball for so long. Shows up with the Mets, blows saves more than anybody else in the league. And then he leaves. I think he goes to Seattle next, and he turns into a 30 save guy again. It's like there was just something about being on the Mets. It just didn't work. K-Rod was terrible with the Mets, and he just, when he left, all of a sudden he was this all-star reliever again.
And it's like, you're a Yankee fan. I like the Yankees too. And personally to me, I don't know about your thoughts, but personally to me, I would like the Mets to actually compete, because I think baseball is better when both New York teams are making the postseason and they're good. So personally for me, the Mets obviously look good on paper. I wish the bad juju bug would end up going away, disappearing forever, and they could actually get something done and stay healthy and not burn out at the end of the year or burn out halfway through the season. Be able to finish the season strong and then come out ready to go in the postseason. But I actually wanted to ask you something. You know, I have another podcast where I just talk specifically Yankees, and I want to talk to you about the potential lineup. And I actually talked to one of my other co-hosts about this on a podcast yesterday on my other channel. We talked about how it's honestly a really good time to be a Yankee fan just because of how much structure there is in the lineup. There's so much flexibility, not even within the batting lineup, but also the field defensively. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think, and we talked about this a little bit before, but when the 2021 season ended, the Yankee fans got all up in their head about, oh, we're going to go get Carlos Correa. We're going to go get Matt Olson. We're going to trade for Sean Manaea or Frankie Montas or Luis Castillo or one of these elite pitchers. That's just, it's not how Brian Cashman does business generally. It's not. And now you look at the team compared to what you had last year, and you have to stop and say, okay, this team is considerably better. Considerably. And you're also bouncing back Gleyber Torres. You're also hoping Aaron Hicks snaps back into form. You're hoping that Joey Gallo maybe snaps back into form. And Anthony Rizzo, we didn't get the best out of those guys after the trade. we didn't get their best. So you're hoping like these guys come back around, and you add Josh Donaldson. That is a massive, massive upgrade over Gio Urshela. And I love Gio. Gio is fantastic. And you look at his defense and you think, wow, this is so much different than having Chase Headley and Miguel Andujar at third base. And then you look at the metrics and you're like, oh, like he's kind of average defensively and he's kind of average at the plate. No, Josh Donaldson is a dude. And when you look at the way that the lineup has been constructed so far in spring training, I love that they've had DJ LeMahieu in the 5-hole a lot, because you have, Josh Donaldson's an OBP and power guy. I like leading him off. I'm fine with it. If Aaron Hicks is like really, really back, he looks good, he looks trim, he looks athletic. If he's really back, I'd love to bat Hicks first, to have these on-base guys, these almost 40% on-base guys ahead of a guy like DJ LeMahieu. So at least, DJ LeMahieu's not a power guy, but if he's coming up in a situation with runners on base, that's great. And if you have a lot of OBP guys on in front of him, even better. That's a perfect fit. Leadoff was never really a great spot for him. So I like batting Josh Donaldson first. And I think the one thing I'm not thrilled about is I think we're still going to see a decent amount of Gleyber Torres at shortstop this year defensively. Because I know Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is a very good defensive shortstop, and a league average hitter, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that offensively from him. But when you're looking for ways to get both DJ LeMahieu and Gleyber Torres at bats, and say, okay, well, DJ can play third one day and first another day and second one day while Gleyber plays short, and you start to add up the at bats and you realize like, the best way to do this might be to also throw Gleyber Torres in at shortstop a few days a week. And that's where you're going to finally get to that spot where, okay, like these guys are all getting at least 4 or 5 games a week. And that's good. That's going to keep them healthy. That's going to keep them sharp. That's a very good balance you have, but I'm not thrilled about Gleyber Torres at shortstop. And I'm not really all that thrilled about him at second base defensively either. But at some point you just say, you know what, Gleyber can play second, DJ can play third. So where are we going to put Gleyber? He's going to be in the lineup. Are we going to put him at second, or are we going to put him at shortstop? That's the only choice we have. But Aaron Judge is going to hit second, of course. Anthony Rizzo, I like him at third, and Stanton 4. I like that. I know Joey Gallo has always liked hitting later in the lineup. So if Joey Gallo is hitting 5, again, fine with that. And then DJ LeMahieu, Gleyber Torres, Aaron Hicks, Kiner-Falefa, Higashioka, who has been on fire in spring training. And I don't know if you know this kid, Ryan Garcia, who is just the biggest Kyle Higashioka fan of all time. Like, that kid's turned into a monster, an absolute monster. But, good for him and good for Higashioka. We always knew that power was there. Allison and I have had a running joke on our podcasts for like a year and a half that anytime Kyle Higashioka makes contact, it leaves the ballpark. The problem is that he hits 183, so that very rarely actually happens. So when you look at this lineup right now, it does look fairly circular. There are a lot of guys that you're betting on a bounce back from. You're betting on more production from DJ LeMahieu. You're betting on more production from Gleyber Torres. You're betting on something from Aaron Hicks. I don't think we know what we're going to get from him this year. But another guy that, looking at 2023, when the shift gets banned, like Aaron Hicks is right up there with the number of shifts. I think he's at like 95 or 96% of his left-handed at-bats are shifted against him. And Joey Gallo is the same way at like 96%. So are we looking at 2023 and saying like, all right, these are the guys, or Joey Gallo is going to be a free agent, and I'm curious to see what his market's going to be like, knowing that the shift is going to be banned, and kind of the stat research that's going to go into saying, all right, well, how much more average are we actually going to get out of Joey Gallo when the shift gets banned? And how much of it is just based on strikeouts that, he's not really going to put that much offense together. But looking at this year, I think, 5th is a perfect spot for him. If he wants to hit 3rd, 4th, whatever, you could mix and match on any given day. And these guys can be plugged and played in any spot in the lineup, more or less.
Yeah, I'm just going to save my thoughts on the Yankees because there's no reason to say anything else, because you hit everything in the nail in the coffin. There's literally no reason for me to say anything about it because, you're pretty much on the same page with me. And I've always said this. I know that you probably seen me say this a handful of times, and it might get kind of annoying. And if it does get annoying, I don't blame anybody. But I've argued for quite some time that I've never really understood why DJ LeMahieu was leading off when the guy's more of a contact hitter. He doesn't take walks. He's not really an on-base percentage guy unless he's getting on through high average. Yeah. And I've always argued that with DJ LeMay's type of production that he had in 2019, where he was just a machine, literally, how he got the nickname, the machine, on when he had runners on base, would always drive them in no matter what it seemed like. It seemed like he always was coming out in the clutch. At that moment in time, it always made me realize, why are we putting DJ LeMahieu in the leadoff spot when you put him in a place like the 3-hole, or you put him in the cleanup spot, and he could get maybe a 20, 30, maybe more RBIs than what he had in the leadoff position in 2019. So that's kind of the role with DJ LeMahieu, is give him not necessarily more at-bats, but give him more opportunities. That's the difference. Yep. You don't want to give him more at-bats. You just want to give him more opportunity to drive in runs. Because Josh Donaldson, high BB percentage guy, high OBP guy, so he walks a lot, gets on base a lot, and he has power. So even if he decides not to walk or doesn't get on base through a single or a double, obviously he slugs, so he's going to get a lot of doubles. He might hit a home run, and then there you go, 1-0. The Yankees are already leading the game. So that's an option. And then obviously you have your heavy hitters like Judge. You have Stanton. You have Joey Gallo. You have Rizzo. You have all these guys where you can put them in and out of the lineup differently. Really, the only guy that I think should stay in his position is Judge. I really love Judge in the 2 spot, because he's one of those guys that you get your leadoff hitter on, and then he's going to do damage, and then it's 2-0 Yankees in the first inning. So that's kind of where I'm at with Aaron Judge. But there's just so much flexibility with the Yankees, not just offensively where you can change. You see a lot of people say the Yankees need to be more lefty influenced. Well, now you have that option. You can go righty-lefty, righty-lefty. I mean, that's an option because you have Gallo and then you have Rizzo and such. So not just that, but then there's also the flexibility in the field. I actually talked with my other co-host the other night, and we talked about utility players like Marwin Gonzalez. There's a universe that I can think of where you end up leaving Judge in right field, and you take Hicks out of the game, because he's not going to play 162 games. Even if he stays healthy, he's not going to play every game. Nobody's going to play 162 games.
I think that would be foolish to try to do that anyway.
Yeah. So with that in mind, there's a world where obviously Judge stays in right field, and then Gallo takes over center field, and then you put Marwin Gonzalez in left field, because Marwin Gonzalez actually is a good defender in left field. So it's honestly crazy how many possibilities there are, not just putting guys in the outfield and hoping that they'll become a plus defender. Actually, opportunities where people are actually good defenders at these positions, so that that you're comfortable with it. I mean, Marwin Gonzalez played for the Astros, Crawford boxes. I'm sure he can handle the left field dimensions of Yankee Stadium. I wouldn't be worried to put Marwin Gonzalez out there personally.
Neither would I. Not at all.
So that's just kind of what I want to talk about with the Yankees, just the amount of flexibility they have. And honestly, if you're a Yankee fan, there's really no reason to not be excited this season. I mean, I know a lot of people, like you said, are kind of bummed that they didn't go out and make a big splash like Carlos Correa, but there is no reason not to be excited. This team is a postseason team. People like to make jokes and say, they're a 4th place team at best. Yeah, they might be a 4th best team, 4th place, 3rd place, but they're still a postseason team. You still have the bullpen, which is extremely good. One of my favorites, Jonathan Loáisiga.
It looks even better this year than it was last year, too. Yeah, Loáisiga's big. I love Jonathan Loáisiga. But Litke's stuff it looks like it's taken a tick up by all the metrics that I've seen. And Clay Holmes will get a full season of him, who is very underrated. And I know, this trade that we made with the Mets for Miguel Castro and Joely Rodriguez, I kind of looked at it as, all right, well, maybe Matt Blake sees something in Miguel Castro where you can kind of rein in the unpredictability of Castro, because the stuff is nasty. The stuff has always been nasty. We've seen him since he was with the Baltimore Orioles. Just have an unbelievable fastball that jumps, and the slider is great. But control was always his problem, and Joely Rodriguez was this ground ball machine for the Yankees last year. It was very good. So I'm guessing Matt Blake sees something that he can say, all right, like we can rein in the control a little bit. But also, you look at the rest of the bullpen and say, why not just have like one wild card who just has unbelievable stuff, because everybody else is stable. Everyone else. The next least stable guy after Miguel Castro is probably Chapman.
And that's kind of crazy to think about. I mean, Chapman has had years where he was completely dominant. I mean, especially in the beginning of the 2021 season. I mean, this guy was so dominant that for a period of stretch of time, he had a negative FIP. That's just kind of stuff that you see from like a game, maybe 2-game performance. But No, he had that carried on for like multiple months, like into May.
And he added the splitter into his repertoire for fun. For fun. He's like, I don't know, I haven't thrown this in a while. Oh, it's nasty. Cool.
Yeah, so the Yankees, if you're a fan of them, just bottom line, there's no reason to not be excited. The starting rotation, obviously, that's one of the things I want to talk about is the misconception that the rotation is going to be a problem this year, when that was the shining light. That was the reason the Yankees even made the postseason in the first place last year. It wasn't the hitting, it wasn't the fielding, it was the starting pitching. It was very crucial that they performed the way that they did in order to make the postseason.
Yeah, I know you know my guy Max Greenfield. He's our resident stats genius over at pretty much anywhere I ever write or podcast or radio or anything. I always talk to Max first before I do any actual stats analysis. He has the Yankees ranked second in starting pitching this year. Second, which even for me, I was like, all right, like that seems a little bit high. But I trust Max, man. He knows these numbers. And I think the underrated aspect of it maybe comes a little bit from underrating Jordan Montgomery, who has done nothing but get better year after year after year. His stuff looks like it played up even a further tick this year, especially the curveball, which, CC Sabathia used to say, watching him on the backfields when he was a rookie, and say, like, that is not only the highest curveball release I've ever seen, but he hides his pitches better than anyone I've ever seen do it. And that's why, Jordan Montgomery, I have him slotted for under a 3.5 ERA this year. I think he just takes another step forward, and especially getting closer to free agency, maybe more people will start to actually be like, hey, like this Montgomery guy, like he's kind of good. He's been kind of good for a few years. He's been nothing but stable. It's fantastic. And he never got any run support last year. So again, like nobody saw the wins. Everyone just saw like, oh, Jordan Montgomery lost the game today because, he only gave up 2 runs, but we only scored up 1. So yeah. And what happened with Nestor Cortez Jr. last year, I don't know if he repeats that, but it was magical. It was very magical to have the role that he had with the Yankees a few years ago, and then to turn around and he was kind of a cult hero. He was never really that good with the Yankees the first time around, and then to go to Seattle, end up getting cut and coming back to the Yankees, and not only did he perform well in that bullpen role, but he turned into a very good starting pitcher, a very good one with real stuff that really plays. It wasn't like some short brief outing in a season where he's just like, yeah, like no one's really figured me out yet, so I'm like kind of exploiting the hitters. Like, no, everyone knows what Nestor's offering, everybody. And the stuff really isn't all that good on its own, but he just, his pick Mitch, his location, it's with the elite of guys who don't throw very hard. And Jameson Taillon, I think a full year of him is going to be very good. And I think just getting healthy for Taillon is great. I always wanted Joe Musgrove from the Pirates instead of Jameson Taillon. But I was happy with what I saw from Taillon last year, and I was happy with what I saw from Kluber. Obviously, we didn't see too much of it because he was injured, and now he's with the Rays. But I think they also have these options with Luis Gil. In an emergency, Luis Medina can give you 3 innings, and he's got electric stuff. You look at Michael King, and even Clark Schmidt and Davy Garcia have looked really good so far this year, and Davy Garcia looks fixed. So you're looking at very high upside on the front end of the rotation with, I haven't even mentioned Luis Severino. If we get 120 out of Severino, I would be thrilled. But you have this high upside rotation and also the depth. You're like, all right, it's July. Well, we got Luis Gil. He's got a 100-mile-per-hour fastball. Luis Medina, yeah, that's 100 too. One more, maybe Davy Garcia. Oh, he's up to 96. His fastball is getting better.
Yeah, I actually was going to mention something with Montgomery when he talked about the run support. There was a running gag joke on Twitter, pretty much all year last year, talking about how Jordan Montgomery and Jacob DeGrom. I was trying to mix Jacob DeGrom and Jordan Montgomery.
Yeah, same
together.
pitcher.
But it's not that they're the same pitcher, but it's the concept that Jacob DeGrom forever just never got any run support. He pitched in the 9 innings. Pitched 9 innings, maybe 1 run ball, shutout ball, and then the Mets would just find a way to lose still. Like, never aid Jacob DeGrom with run support. Obviously, I'm not saying Montgomery is DeGrom because he's not even close to him.
Nobody's DeGrom.
With all due respect, but still, it's kind of the same curse. It's Montgomery, doesn't matter. He goes out there and gives out 3 runs, 2 runs, 1 run. Yankees just have
we just won't score it.
Yeah, they just refuse to score. And I'm like, God, I just want to go up to them and be like, you know how disrespectful this is to your friend Montgomery? That you guys are
Yeah,
not providing
he's
run
pitching his
support?
ass off up here every week. Every week he comes out here and throws a gem, and you're just like, I think it's a day off today.
Yeah. So I did want to mention some other kind of predictions because we haven't finished all the predictions yet, but wanted to talk about the other two division winners. I will say, I think obviously for the NL Central will be this team right here. I don't know if you can see.
Oh yeah, the Brewers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the Brewers a lot with Burns, Woodruff, Peralta. That is an unbelievable front three. I'm hoping we get some semblance of Christian Yelich back because last year he was just a league average hitter essentially, and the Brewers really relied on pitching last year, but there weren't any bad hitters in their lineup per se, but it was just top to bottom. Everybody was pretty much exactly league average for their position. And you saw that hurt them in the postseason. I was like, okay, like we got to get some offense now. And we're facing off against the other team's ace. So we kind of need all these average hitters to maybe step it up a bit. And I mean, watching Corbin Burns is it's awesome. I watch every one of his starts because he's so good, man. He's so good.
Yeah, I love Corbin Burns. This is a Yelich jersey, by the way, because I actually tried to get a Corbin Burns one because I love Corbin Burns as much as you do, but I don't know what it is. This might be a hot take, and if you disagree, if anyone disagrees, completely fair, but I think this jersey right here that I'm wearing is the best jersey out of any baseball team. All 30 baseball teams, this blue and yellow one is the best jersey. That's why I bought it. I'm not even a Brewers fan. I just like Corbin Burns. I do like Christian Yelich, and this is it's a fire jersey. So I had to mention that. But
I'd put it in the upper echelon. I really like their pinstripe ones. Their pinstripe ones are very good too. And I like the Padres sand pinstripes ones, the slight brown one. Those are nice.
You know what's actually funny about that? I'm going to put her on the spot. My girlfriend and I did a fun little game about 2 weeks ago. Where I went to MLBshop.com and just went through all the jerseys because I knew what I like. I know what I think's the best, what's the least, in my opinion. But I wanted to get her opinion. And whenever I showed her those brown colored pinstripe jerseys that the Padres had, she's like, "Nope, putting that at the end of the list." She
come
didn't
on.
like them. I'm like, that's
on.
disrespectful.
Those are beautiful.
So yeah, I had to mention that. It went. She even thought the Rays jerseys looked better, and I'm like, I think the Rays jerseys a little too plain for my taste. If they brought back their '90s, Devil Rays uniforms, I'd be like, okay,
Devil Rays
those are fire. But
they should have never changed the name. They should have kept Devil Rays. That's a great name.
No kidding, and they should have kept their uniforms for that matter. Just because I'm just not really impressed with their standard of uniforms. And to be fair. I'm not trying to be like Yankee bias. It's not because it's because I hate the Rays. Like I can even admit that I think the Red Sox uniforms are clean. I mean, I think they're in the upper threshold of the better jerseys in the league. So it's not just Yankee bias. I just think that they're a little.
The lights at Fenway too are a little bit different. So for whatever reason, they look a little bit more old school, like 50s, 60s kind of baseball, and they look great, man. They do look great.
So before I go off and the other predictions, while we're talking about jerseys already, one quick thing. You know how this year they're adding more teams to have city uniforms, and then obviously they started the trend last year. What was your favorite city uniform from last season?
Ooh, that's a good question. It wasn't the Yankees. That's for sure. I don't even know if they did a city uniform, but I know that I didn't like whatever proposals I saw, but I am in favor of the Yankees using like the spring training uniforms on the roads. I don't hate that at all. I don't care about the gray uniforms. Oh man, that's a good question. I'm gonna have to go back and look through them all. I know Miami was really good. Miami was great, and Jazz Chisholm in that red jersey was that's fire. I'm gonna have to go back and look through them all.
Gotcha. I already know immediately off the bat what I can say. Mine was the Southside White Sox uniforms.
Those are pretty good. Yeah, those are pretty
fire.
Good.
I actually went to Chicago about 3 weeks ago, and unfortunately at the time there wasn't any games because spring training and such. But we visited Wrigley, visited Guaranteed Rate Field, went around Chicago for a few days. Actually went into one of the shops. It's literally across the street from Wrigley Field. More Cubs stuff that I could even possibly fathom. I've never seen so much Cubs apparel there. But I saw, which was really kind of weird to me, they were selling like 3 Cardinals hats. I'm like, what are you guys doing selling Cardinals hats? It's the Cubs. Like, don't you guys hate the Cardinals? And then they were selling the Southside Chicago White Sox uniforms. And I want one so bad, and I was so tempted to buy one. But then there was like that little like, angel on my shoulder kind of being like, are you really going to walk out of this store with a Southside Chicago White Sox uniform? I'm like, nope, I'll just buy it on MLB or something. But
yeah, let's ship that one. We don't have to walk out of the store with that one. Let's ship it.
And what's actually funny too, when I went to the store, was they were selling Yankee jerseys, the Road Grays, for discounted off. I don't know why, but it happened to be, funnily enough, coincidence or not, I don't know, but the only number that they had is Rizzo's current number, and I'm like, there's no way.
Oh, that had to be purposeful.
There's no way that's.
Was this before the trade?
Yeah, this was like 3 weeks ago. So it's
man,
I don't know. Like that was the craziest thing. I was like, I went up to the store owner and I was like, you guys realize that these Yankee jerseys that you have on clearance are all
Rizzo.
Anthony Rizzo's number? And I'm like, do you guys care about that? And he's like, no, not really. I mean, we miss the guy, but it is what it is. They kind of know the Cubs kind of lowballed him on a deal, and that's kind of why he didn't want to stick around with the Cubs. So it is what it is. But I did want to mention one last thing before we continue. The Serpent jerseys. I also love those. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but the
Diamondbacks. Yeah. Those are good.
Yeah, those were so nice. I love those.
The Diamondbacks low-key have like really nice uniforms. The red ones especially. Like, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, they have. Are you talking about the ones where they have like they're like the little circles, so they're shaped like the scales of a Diamondback across the shoulders? Yeah, those are nasty. Those are cool. I like the Diamondbacks uniforms. They're old ones, like they're old, like teal. I think the teal color, is that the right color I'm talking about, or the cyan color?
Yeah. Like when you think of Randy Johnson, you think of that jersey. That's the one I'm thinking of.
Those jerseys, those purple ones, are fire. Yeah. I love those uniforms.
That's old. That's as 90s as it gets.
Yeah, but other than that, probably go ahead and give it to the Dodgers for. I mean, do I really need to
seems fair. Seems fair.
I mean, there's not really much to be said. I mean, I know they lost Kenley Jansen, but then you get Freddie Freeman, and obviously
and you already had Max Muncy at first base too. It's like, we already have an elite first baseman. Like, let's go get another. Like, all right, chill, please, for like 2 seconds.
It's such a luxury that Dodgers fans have, knowing that their team is just gonna spin like every offseason. It must be
we're losing Corey Seager. Good thing we traded for Trey Turner. Like, cool, fun, very fun for everybody else involved.
And it's crazy when your utility player, who still finds a way to get a decent amount of plate appearances, your utility player is Chris Taylor. Like,
he was very highly sought after. He could have gotten a starting job almost anywhere in baseball, and it's just like, I guess I'll hang out here in LA and I'll take my 4 games a week and get my ring, and that's gonna be cool. It's gonna be cool with me. It's just, all right, like, Chris Taylor's really good. Like, go somewhere else, play every day. No, I'm just gonna chill with the Dodgers. That's fine.
You got to give him credit, though. He's very loyal and obviously loves where he's at. So
yeah, I wouldn't leave the Dodgers either if I was on the Dodgers. Like, if you guys want me to like mop up after the games, like, I'll do it as long as the ring comes.
Yeah, no kidding. Me myself, you might know this or not. I know that all my Dodgers followers know this, but very, very massive Chris Taylor fan. I'm so massive that it's like, every time that I see on my phone or wherever I can see, I look up like all the games and see who's about to come up to bat and stuff, and I'm not watching that game. If I see Chris Taylor is anywhere about to bat,
it's over.
It's over. I am not missing his plate appearance, his at bat, whatever you want to call it. I'm such a massive Chris Taylor fan. Obviously, good utility player. I wanted him to be a Yankee. I know realistically wasn't going to happen. Very happy he's very happy and content playing with the Dodgers, even though if he doesn't get full playing time, because the Dodgers roster is just completely stacked. It's not even that Chris Taylor is bad. It's that they're just so beyond stacked that they just don't really have a lot of consistent room for him to play a lot.
Yeah, it's not even just the offense. Just like, by the way, you have potential Cy Youngs all over the rotation. Oh yeah, and in the bullpen you have some of the nastiest arms in the entire league. Yeah, cool, very fun. Like everybody is very much rooting for you to just keep winning and destroying everybody else. What, by spending money on Freddie Freeman when you in no way needed him. The weak part in their lineup was Gavin Lux. That was the weak part in their lineup. And they're like, yeah, I guess we could put Gavin Lux, one of our former top prospects, on the bench and just move Max Muncy back to second base, where he'll probably lead all second basemen in home runs.
It's crazy. It's not fair. It's not fair, man.
Yeah, I gotta be careful, or all my Padres friends are gonna accuse me of Dodger loving. I can't do that. Can't have that.
Speaking about it, I mean, I bet the Padres are gonna go to the wild card in your predictions.
Yeah, I have them in the wild card too. I don't know what's gonna happen with the Giants this year, to be honest. I really don't know if they're gonna be able to replicate what they did last year. And the rotation I think is solid. I think it's gonna stay intact, and the bullpen I think is very good as well. But when you look at what they got offensively last year, first of all, from Buster Posey, who's gone now, and that really sucks because I loved Buster Posey. Just like, if you're looking for one guy to just kind of sum up the entire league and be like, who's like the best and most likable dude in the league, like it might be Buster Posey. He very much is in that conversation. And you see what you got from Brandon Crawford offensively last year. Does he repeat that? I don't know. I wouldn't bet on it. He was very good offensively last year, although I have soured on him because of how hard Chris Russo pushed for him to win MVP when he had no business in that conversation. And I hated that. I didn't like that at all. But he didn't really get much from Yastrzemski last year. Ruff was good. Like it's a lot of pieces where you're looking at the team and saying, like, did we get the best we could have gotten out of this team last year all at the same time? And like, we really gave the Dodgers a run, like to the very end of the year. And did the Giants win the division or the Dodgers win the division? I don't even remember.
They literally won the division by the skin of their teeth.
Like it was. I remember it being close.
102 wins to 101. Like
and I remember begging the Cardinals to beat the Dodgers in the wild card game. That was a good one.
Well, you can thank Chris Taylor for walking that game off.
Yeah, so. No, I remember. I remember. Oh man, yeah, but I don't know if the Giants are anything like they were last year, it's going to be a little tougher for the Padres to get in, especially considering the collapse that they had last year, and somehow all predicated around trying to trade Eric Hosmer, which is this guy's got a stranglehold on the clubhouse. I don't get it, because no one in that clubhouse can look at Eric Hosmer and say, yeah, you know what, that's like one of the best first basemen in the league. Nobody at all. So wouldn't you want an upgrade? But like, everyone just loves him. It makes no sense. And they tried to trade him at the deadline, and then everything started going downhill. And there was that very famous clip of Manny yelling at Fernando Tatis Jr., which got squashed pretty quick. But at that point, it was like, all right, the season's over. They were in contention for a wild card spot with a pretty comfortable lead, a few games over, I think it was the Reds at the time. It didn't end up being the Reds by the end, because St. Louis went on that crazy run at the end of the year. But you could just watch the rest of the season slip out of their fingers. So I don't like those vibes going into this year, but they've got good pieces. They're getting Mike Clevenger back. They fired Larry Rothschild, which is that's a recipe for success anytime Larry Rothschild gets fired, and brought in Ruben Niebla from Cleveland, I have very high hopes for him, especially for a guy like Chris Paddock, who has great stuff, but hasn't really put together the fastball command and doesn't always have the curveball command. And the changeup's just elite. But when you don't have the fastball command, and you don't have the curveball command, guess what? We're sitting changeup and we're going to hit it. So I'd like to see what he does with him. And it looks like Mackenzie Gore is going to be a factor at some point this year, which is crazy, because last year he was so terrible. But they're interesting. They have probably one of the best rotations in baseball. Top 3, maybe, definitely top 5. And the offense it's good. I don't want to say it's great, because there are question marks there too, with what are you getting from Trent Grisham? What are you getting from Will Myers on a consistency basis? From the catcher spot, what are you getting? Like, there's question marks in the offense. It's not as circular as, say, the Dodgers or the Yankees lineup, but the firepower at the top is undeniable. Tatis, Cronenworth, Voit, even Will Myers when he does get hot, like Manny Machado, that's a lot of firepower in the offense. So I would probably put them in the wild card. They're definitely not going to win the division. I think that would be crazy to say that the Padres could beat the Dodgers for the division, but I could see them maybe finishing in like the 4 or 5 seed or the 6 seed even.
Yeah, definitely. I actually, from my predictions, I don't know if this is crazy, and it might be, very controversial or whatnot because you're talking about the Giants, but I actually have the Giants making the wild card. I do know that there are a lot of questions, and that's fair.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is Buster Posey. I mean, I was very surprised Buster retired because it just seemed like he's back in his prime again, even better than his prime.
Yeah,
I mean,
he took that year off, and it was like, wow, like Buster Posey is back. This wasn't like the shell of Buster Posey. It's Buster Posey is back.
So if Brandon Belt can have another season like he did, if Crawford can continue doing that, and they put some other pieces together, and they brought in Carlos Rodon.
Yep.
They have
I love that for them. That's a perfect fit.
They have Alex Cobb. Here's an interesting one, Matthew Boyd. I have actually been very interested in him since his days with Detroit because I'm big on Sierra. You probably know what Sierra is.
Oh, yeah.
Very important pitching stat in my opinion. And Matthew Boyd's always been one of those guys that was extremely unlucky. He'd always have a pretty good Sierra. His ERA wouldn't show the full story of how good his stuff is and how good his stuff can be and how much it can get better. So I'm very curious about how Boyd does and if he can actually progress forward and also get some better
that's a
luck
pitcher's park. That's a pitcher's park right there too.
So that's a concerning factor. So I definitely think the Giants have a shot to win the wild card. I don't think they're going to win the division again. I don't think they're going to compete with the
I highly
Dodgers
doubt
the
that.
End. I feel like that was a complete anomaly. It's not that I don't like the Giants or anything. I really like watching them. A fun team. I just don't see that happening again, especially against a high, powerful lineup like the Dodgers, a team that, without question, can very well go to the World Series and win another title. Very well. I mean, that's not really a wild concept to grasp. The Dodgers are an elite offensive team, great pitching. Great bullpen. They added pieces too. I mean, it's an all-around elite, great team. So the Giants will definitely have their work cut out for them. I did want to put you on the spot a little bit since we're talking about Buster Posey.
Let's do it.
Do you think Buster Posey is a Hall of Famer?
I'm going to say yes. And I think when you're looking at his Hall of Fame case, you kind of have to consider that he was a catcher in an era where catchers were very much not what he was. Like, how many great offensive catchers have there been in the last 20 or so years? So even though his career really wasn't that long, to be that dominant, and he was no slouch defensively either. He was great defensively. To be as good as he was in his short career in a position that is really, it just wasn't that great of a position. I kind of look at it the way I would look at maybe like Billy Wagner and say like, yeah, like he was a closer. So you can't really stack up his like K numbers and his innings with some of these other guys on this list, but this was a position that really wasn't Hall of Fame worthy to say. There weren't a lot of guys that really fit that bill in the era that Buster Posey played in. I mean, you look around the league, maybe if you want to include Jorge Posada, you could, but he was a little bit more borderline. Posey was definitely better than him. Salvador Perez, maybe. But it's just, and there's also the World Series of it all, the 3 World Series and how important he was to those runs. I'm going to say what A-Rod says all the time. What a great ambassador for the game he was. I hate that. I hate when A-Rod says that about literally everyone. But Buster Posey was a very big part of just being the face of baseball. You think back to like the This Is Sports Center commercials back when ESPN actually cared about baseball. That it was everything about Buster Posey was fantastic. I think you're going to get to a point where it's like, okay, like more writers are going to be trying to make the case for than trying to make the case against, like the way they would do with like a Barry Bonds, where writers were really just looking for a reason not to put him in. It's going to be the opposite with Buster Posey, where you're going to say, okay, well, he only played 12 years, but he was awesome and he was really good, and catchers weren't really a premium position when he was there, and he has 3 World Series and all of that. I think he probably does get in the Hall of Fame.
I've always said this, and I'm actually planning on doing a video about it, like a deep analysis, go through every possible amount of research and stats that I can. But I've always said this: if Buster Posey gets in the Hall of Fame, or it doesn't, let me rephrase that, if he doesn't get in the Hall of Fame, but Yadier Molina does, that's an issue. That is a
Yeah.
big issue, and people are
Yeah.
highly undervaluing how much Posey meant to the Giants.
Yeah, I would agree. Yadier Molina was never really anything special offensively. It was all defense for him. And, I don't want to say defense doesn't matter in baseball because it obviously does, but offense is weighed significantly more.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more important to be a good hitter than a good defender.
That's why, like, even a guy like Simmons, who is undeniably, I mean, would you say he's like the greatest defensive shortstop, at least in the modern era?
He's in the conversation.
Yeah.
Modern era for sure.
Yeah.
I would say he is absolutely in that conversation for all time because, even today with what we have, the data that we have offensively and how we understand how runs are scored, to be so good defensively that teams will say, you know what, like, we don't really care about the offense thing. Like, you're saving us so many runs defensively that we'll deal with it. We'll put up with it. Like, that's elite tier. Like, even good defensive catchers are like at least average among catchers if they're starters. Like, they might not be league average at that 100 weighted runs created plus, but they're in like the 90s. And you can say, okay, like, we're getting really good defense and we're not really losing that much on offense, so it's fine. But like what you lose with Andrelton Simmons offensively to turn around and say like, yeah, like, we're still going to sign him though and play him every day. Like, you got to be elite defensively.
And I actually looked up the stat not too long ago. I posted on Twitter not too long ago. But I found, just doing some basic research, not that hard to find, that out of every third baseman, at least in the modern era where you can actually calculate and find things like DRS and ultimate zone rating and outs above average and such, in that period of time, every single person in that position, like just defensively, it doesn't matter really what position it is, Adrian Beltre was at the top with like 200 defensive runs saved, which is just nuts. And then Andrelton Simmons is right under him with like 197. But the funny thing is, the most just mind-blowing stat about all of this is that despite Simmons having 3 less defensive runs saved than Beltre, he played almost 10,000 less innings. Like,
yeah.
When I saw that, I'm just like, that's insane. Like, I don't think people truly appreciate Simmons enough just for how much value his defense brings alone. Now, if you want to say he's a bad hitter, I understand that. I'm not supporting his offense in the slightest. I wish the guy could at least be average, because if he could at least be a dead average hitter, with how valuable his defense is, his WAR would shoot up like dramatically. Yeah. But it's just insane.
He'd get more than $4 million from the Cubs, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just insane just how much like valuable he is. Like, everybody always knows about, the Arenados or the Chapmans, but then there's this guy named Simmons that's like, you guys don't even realize how much better Simmons is defensively than like a guy like Chapman or Arenado.
Just rename the Platinum Glove after Andrelton Simmons, because like that's what it is. That's what it is.
No joke. But I think some of the last things that we should talk about, just briefly, because we've talked about a lot. I've had a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
I would love to sit here and talk 3 hours, but podcasts usually do better when you don't go 4 or 5 hours or so.
Yeah, I haven't learned that lesson. Every time we have Max on, especially like one time we had Max on when Allison wasn't there, and that was over a 2-hour podcast. We went for over 2 hours. Like, no one's gonna listen to this. No one's gonna listen for this long.
But it is worth it at the end of the day. At least you have fun with it. So.
But great clips.
Yeah, Max is great, by the way. I actually had him on a podcast last year with him, and I can't remember his name. I'm going to feel terrible, especially if he watches this. He'd be like, you forgot my name? But I know what I do remember about him was he was a Harvard graduate, and that's how Max met him, was that they both worked for the Nationals.
Oh, the guy who developed the G War and K War with him. Yes. Yeah, I love that story.
Yeah, I actually did a podcast with both.
I don't remember his name either, though.
So I don't have to feel as bad since you.
Yeah. No.
Now I'm gonna go try and find his name and DM him and be like, I'm sorry, dude. Like, I forgot your name on a podcast. I was trying.
Hey man, don't listen to this next episode. Don't listen to this one. Skip it. We forgot to record.
But yeah, they were incredible on the podcast, just explaining G-War and the concept. Very intellectual group of people. But just kind of briefly give me your thoughts on who you think is going to be the AL MVP, NL MVP, and then obviously Cy Young for both leagues as well.
Yeah, for AL, I'm still thinking Vladdy. I know we talked about this a little bit earlier when we were going over the divisions. I think just Vladdy looks so good, and he's even skinnier than he was last year. And when when he first came up, everyone just expected him to light the world on fire like he always had in the minor leagues. And that was maybe unrealistic to expect, but even the most conservative people would say, even if he gets off to a slow start, like, we do expect that at some point. We do expect that he is going to be like an all-star MVP caliber hitter. Defensively, who cares? I would say it's Vladdy. Also, just for 2023, it's definitely going to be Jose Ramirez without a doubt, because that's another guy who gets shifted in 96% of his left-handed at-bats, which is like 400 of them. So just opening up the field for Jose Ramirez, like, come on. That's going to be ridiculous. So this is Vladdy's year. I got to give it to Vladdy this year. NL MVP, that's a really tough one, because there have been a lot of guys over the last couple of years. I want to give it to Juan Soto. I really do. And I think if he had played like he played in the second half last year, the entire year, before he went into the home run derby to fix his swing, the first guy to ever fix his swing in the home run derby, which is absurd, I think he probably runs away with MVP. So I think I'll go with Soto, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see Bryce Harper in that conversation, if you see Manny Machado in that conversation. Tatis is probably going to miss too much of the season to get into that conversation. But I don't really know, man. Juan Soto is just so good. He's probably, I would say, maybe the best hitter in all of baseball. I don't think that's a stretch to say. His shortcomings are defensive, but the way he walks and works at bats and hits the ball over the fence with launch angle, like, he is as complete a hitter as there is.
And here's something interesting. Both of those predictions are the same as mine. So great minds think alike.
There we go.
I won't talk about Vlad because I talked about him earlier in the podcast. But with Juan Soto, even as great as a hitter as he is and currently is, and he's going to continue to get better with age. I mean, he's unbelievable with how young he is. And my favorite part about his game, and one of the biggest part about his game, is the BB percentage and the on-base percentage. I mean, he is literally, by definition, I think that we should make him the official owner of the on-base percentage stat. We should just name him the king of OBP, because that's literally the name of his game, is just getting on base, whether it's walk, whether it's hit, and then he can also slug. He can also hit for power when he needs to. So he is, like you said, a complete player. I ended up choosing Soto because of the fact that names like Acuna won't be back till May, and Tatis also is going to miss significant time. Now, if both of those guys were healthy at the beginning of the season, then I don't even know who I'd pick. I think it'd be honestly too difficult to say if you get a full season from them, not to mention guys like you said, Manny Machado is always an option, Bryce Harper, even Trey Turner is an option.
Yeah, Trey Turner's
really
a deep cut pick this year.
So there's a lot of talent. It's going to be a little, in my opinion, it's going to be much harder in the National League for AL or for AL MVP. For MVP in the National League, it's going to be much harder to decide than it is in the American League.
I love it. Let's just get a chaotic MVP race right down to the very end. I love it. Last week of the season, we're deciding.
I'm down. But like I said earlier, with just like Acuna and Tatis, really the only reason why I'm putting Juan Soto over them immediately is just because Acuna is going to miss time till at least May, if I'm not mistaken, and then Tatis is going to miss time from the motorcycle accident, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that's really the only defining factor, because I do firmly believe that Tatis can win MVP any given year.
Any year.
Acuna, I said this many times, is that if Acuna wouldn't have suffered from that ACL injury, I guarantee he wins MVP over Bryce Harper. I guarantee it.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. He was playing fantastic last year, and joke's on us for thinking the Braves were done when Acuna went down. Of course, Eddie Rosario coming to the rescue. But yeah, Acuna, maybe that's my 2023 pick. Looking at him and being like, all right, this is the year. You're due one. You're due. You've been passed over a couple times. This year, you're due.
But it would be crazy, though. I think the craziest thing to consider would be, what if Acuna was so good this year that despite missing pretty much at least a full month, if not like a month and a half, because I'm not really sure what the timetable is specifically May. I'm sure it's not May 1st right on the dot, so he's going to miss a little bit more than just a full month.
You got to ramp up a little bit too, and got to get going.
Could you imagine, though, if based off of F4 alone, if he was able to pass everybody by the end of the season, because his F4 at the point that it was before his ACL injury was absurd. The amount of time play that he had, it was crazy. That's why I think it's not unreasonable to think that if he would have stayed healthy, he's definitely winning MVP, because obviously Tatis had a little bit of troubles last year staying healthy, and I think really one of the only guys that would be in Acuna's way, like consistently, would be Juan Soto. I think for the next decade at least, you're going to see Acuna and Soto battling each other out for MVP every given year.
And Tatis, that's going to be a 3-horse race year after year after year. And those extensions coming for Soto. It's going to be on the way. So that's just locked into the National League, all of them coming up at the same time, all of them making their debuts at generally the same time, and we're ready to roll. The next 10 years, those are the guys.
And here's something interesting that I kind of want to talk to you about before we roll in for the final bit of our segment with the Cy Young winners, is everybody knows on the planet, unless you're living under a rock, most people know that the contract that Mike Trout is on is highly undervalued. This man is worth way more than what he signed. So is it a possibility that Soto could completely crash a contract that Mike Trout had, just because of the fact that does Soto realize how much value he has? Not that Mike Trout is downplaying his value or anything, because I mean, I don't really have to tell anyone how good Mike Trout is. I mean, he's the best player, one of the best players I've ever seen in my lifetime. I mean, one of the only players I can
very much in the conversation for best of all time.
Yeah,
it's just, the health has always been his problem, and that sucked that we've gotten robbed of that. But there has always been speculation that Juan Soto, not Mike Trout, Juan Soto would be the first player to make it to that 500 million mark. Mm-hmm. Is he going to? I doubt it. Mm-hmm. And that's not because of anything wrong with Juan Soto, but mostly that Mike Trout set that market. And how much higher above the market are you actually going to be willing to go? Like, if you're the Nationals, you're offering this guy the biggest contract of all time. That's got to be good enough, right? It's not like Juan Soto is going to come back and say, no, like, I really want to get to that 500 number. Like, I want to get to that one. He's going to be like, really? You're going to pay me $450 million over my career? Like, sold. We're done. What is $50 million at that point?
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to say, I'm not going to get Dodgers fans' hopes up, so don't believe anything I say, but I could totally see him just the Nationals not offering him a deal that he wants, because obviously his value is going to be
also super possible.
And then the Dodgers just be like, you know what? We're going to blow through the luxury tax and we're just going to pick up Juan Soto.
Like whatever. Like we don't know where we're going to play him yet, but I guess we'll find somewhere for him. Yeah, maybe we'll bump Cody Bellinger to the bench a little bit, maybe. Like, all right, enough Dodgers, enough.
So the final thing that we should discuss is the Cy Young winners. So go ahead and give me your thoughts on who you think is going to win Cy Young for each division.
Yeah, I really want to pick Garrett Cole for AL Cy Young. And yeah, I wish that he wasn't injured towards the end of last year, because he had a very legitimate chance at winning the Cy Young over Robbie Ray. But those September starts last year, you could tell that he wasn't right, and you could tell he wasn't right when he got to the playoffs. So I wish that, first of all, I wish he never got injured. And second of all, I wish that he just gave up more or less on the last month of the season and said, like, all right, like, I'm going to trust the next guy to get us to the playoffs so that I'm here 100%. Because right now, it's not like he was pitching through pain and pitching better than anyone else could have on the roster. Like, he was bad. He was straight up bad and a straight up detriment to the team in September because he was pitching hurt. I think this year, I don't really see anyone else in the American League that's like jumping out and saying, yes, like, I am very much better than Garrett Cole right now. Does that mean Garrett Cole is going to have the best season out of all the pitchers? No, I don't think so. I don't think that's out of the question at all. Kevin Gausman could very well be in that conversation. Chris Sale's injured now, so he won't be in that conversation. But, even looking across the league, Justin Verlander could find himself back in that conversation. Robbie Ray is still in the American League. He's with Seattle now. That's Pitchers Park. He could be in that conversation. But when you look at those other guys and you look at Garrett Cole, I think it's fair to say, like, okay, they're not him. If he does his best, it's a runaway. It's his award. But everybody else would have to be at their best and rely on Garrett Cole to have a pedestrian year by his standards. By everyone else's standards, you look at last year, a 3.23 ERA, like, wow, that's great for everybody except Garrett Cole. And now you're looking at Garrett Cole and saying, well, what happened to that sub 3? Where was that? We were looking for that this year, which is unrealistic. So I would say Garrett Cole for AL, and then NL is another tough conversation. I liked Zach Wheeler last year. I love Corbin Burns. I love Brandon Woodruff as well. I think I would probably go Burns again, honestly, because he is so dominant, and Jacob deGrom's not going to play enough this year to be in that conversation. I think that's absolutely just fair to assume at this point, when we're getting a month into the season before we're even reevaluating Jacob deGrom. I think it's fair to say he's not going to get enough starts. Max Scherzer, it's just kind of the Mets, man. It's the Mets. I can't see a Met winning the Cy Young Award that's not Jacob deGrom, because Jacob deGrom is literal God. So I want to give it to Corbin Burns. I like Corbin Burns. I think he's fantastic.
Would it be a shocking moment if I revealed that your picks are my picks? So, like,
we're right in line on everything. This is great. This is what makes great podcasts, when two people get together and just literally agree on everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it's honestly, for the AL Cy Young, it's honestly Garrett Cole's award to lose. I mean, he's just so far better than everyone else, and has proven that since at least 2018, when he had that really good run with the Astros from 2018, 2019. And really one of the only guys that you didn't mention that I think could give him a run for his money, I think that he's obviously another candidate for AL Cy Young, would be Shane Bieber too.
Yeah,
Shane Bieber's an option. Like you said, obviously Gossman is an option, Robbie Ray, Justin Verlander, especially if Justin Verlander can get back to his form, that's obviously a good option. But I think it's honestly Garrett Cole's. If he can stay healthy, unlike the unluckiness that was of 2021, and obviously he was pitching hurt through all of September.
Robbie Ray didn't pitch well down the stretch last year either, but Robbie Ray wasn't hurt. He just kind of lost it for a couple of games down the stretch. Like, Garrett Cole very easily could have won that award last year. It's a shame that he didn't, because it's kind of like the monkey off the back thing. It's like, all right, like, Garrett Cole won Cy Young, so can you guys stop like nitpicking everything you think he does wrong? Like, he was voted the best pitcher in the league, so relax.
Yeah, I agree. And then with the National League, I mean, it's really tough. Like you said, liked a lot what I saw out of Zach Wheeler. I actually, before Zach Wheeler became a Philadelphia Philly, I actually was one of the people who wanted the Yankees to get him in the Bronx. I mean, I saw a lot of potential from his numbers. I know a lot of people were kind of against it. They're like, I don't like his numbers.
High innings numbers too. Like high innings. He threw a lot of pitches last year.
And obviously he's an option. Brandon Woodruff, Corbin Burns, but at the end of the day, it's got to be Corbin Burns. I mean, the dude he's just nasty. It just seems like at least 50% of everything that Pitching Ninja posts is about
it's Corbin Burns. Yeah, and the other 50% is Devin Williams on the back end.
That's so true. It's just, I mean, the Brewers in general just have so many talented pitchers that have some of the most ridiculous stuff that it's like, you're breaking laws of physics. This should not be humanly possible to throw the kind of filth that you're throwing right now. But really, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of pitchers that could win it, but I would give it to Jacob deGrom, but it's no different than the Juan Soto versus Acuna and Tatis argument. It's all about Jacob deGrom is going to miss a significant amount of time, and that Corbin Burns, as of right now, is healthy. So if he stays healthy and pitches as well as he did last year, there's no reason I don't see that he can't win Cy Young again. Yeah,
no reason at all. Unless Jacob deGrom is magically healed after 1 month and is ready to go and really only missed 4 or 5 starts, he's not going to get the starts. He's going to end up at like 15 or 20 starts, and he's going to be dominant in those 15 or 20 starts. Don't get me wrong. He'll be the most dominant pitcher, assuming health, but at the end of the year, you're looking at it and saying, well, Corbin Burns threw like 60 more innings than him. It's not like we're looking at Jacob deGrom saying, oh, well, he was at like 160, but Zach Wheeler was at like 210. That's a lot different than like, oh, Jacob deGrom threw like 100 and Corbin Burns threw 160. That's a much bigger difference, even though it's the same number.
Yeah. So that's about it, my man. I had so much fun. Is there anything else that you would like to mention on the podcast that you think needs to be talked about that we did not discuss?
Oh, I think we, in the last 2 hours, have covered pretty much everything that we could have possibly covered about baseball. Although, if you want to go for 2 more hours, I'm ready. I'm ready to go for 2 more hours. Yeah, no one's going to listen to another 2 hours, though.
I would gladly, because you're very, very intellectually gifted when it comes to baseball knowledge.
I love hearing that.
And it's not me hyping you up or anything. And I followed you. We followed each other for quite some time. I've always liked your opinions.
Oh yeah, you're doing the Lord's work on Twitter. Everyone gets their clips from you, man.
Yeah, I've seen some people doing some dirty stuff trying to steal the clips, but it's like, what can you do?
It's just rude. Just give it a quote tweet, man. I always quote tweet. I would never /video/one you. You get the quote tweet full on.
I honestly, I don't mind the point where it's like the /video/one, because Jared, I'm talking about Mr. Red Sox. Yeah, Barstool, man. Well, not with Barstool anymore. I think he's with DraftKings, if I'm not mistaken. He's doing his completely own thing now. But Jared, I mean, I owe him a lot, so much. Jared has helped me grow significantly, and it's a shame. It is really a shame that I had my old account suspended, because if I didn't get that account suspended, I would be. I'm not really sure what the projections are, and I'm not saying like followers or everything and stuff, because I kind of just go as I go. Like, I'm just like, okay, gain more followers, cool, I'm happy with it, but I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, I'm gonna have 5, 10, 15K or followers, and be like, I'm not gonna talk to you. I mean, I talk to anybody, whoever is like replying my tweets.
Shit, you talk to me.
I don't care if you have 0 followers, 1 follower, 20, 100. It doesn't matter. Like, if you're fun, engaging, and you know what you're talking about, and you make it fun, then I don't really care. I mean, I'm not gonna boost my ego just because I have more followers than someone. That's just not me personally. I don't believe in that.
That's the vibe right there. Just talk to anybody, and you've carved yourself out a really nice niche in the baseball world, in the baseball media world, and I'm very much looking forward to see what comes next, because I've been following you for a long time, just from even Yankee fandom before you started going, full league, every home run. I have no idea how you even do that. First of all, I'm not technically savvy enough to rip video with the sound as well. I'm not technically savvy enough for that, but just the sheer volume, man. You're in college, live it up.
Yeah, there have been some people that try to get like the deep secrets, and sometimes I just kind of nitpick it, because I'm kind of like, I don't want to like be that guy to like keep things from everyone, because I want other people to grow and be successful too. But there's also a part of me that's like, I figured this out by doing this for like 2 years, so like eventually some people will catch on to how I'm doing it, you know what I mean? I don't feel like it's like the most complicated thing. Really, all it is, to be honest with you, is just having MLB's app open on my phone, and I'll have like a certain monitor that has all the games. Sometimes I'll split them up so I can watch multiple at one time. Mm-hmm. It really just depends. Because I have 3 monitors, so the right one is always the games. The left one is usually the left one. I used it. I'm changing it up this year, but usually the left one I used it for just ESPN and then Statcast. Especially when covering Yankee games, I would always like, Judge hits home run. I'd be like, this is how hard he hit the ball. This is his launch angle. This is how far it went. A lot of people seem to like that, so I just kept doing it. And then I would like to expand that, with the league too. And just going back to Jared for a second, really, Jared sharing my videos and seeing how much growth I got is really the reason why I started doing videos across the league, because in 2019, it was just specifically Yankees. Yeah,
that's how it always works, man. You get a little taste and you're like, okay, like I think not only can I physically do this, not only do I have the capabilities to do this, but also like I want to do it. I want to keep growing. I want to keep interacting with these people. I want to keep building myself a nice little career starter here. Mm-hmm. That's, my biggest regret was that, I went through college in like city planning, and I went to like law school for a year, and I was like, you know what, like, fuck this. Like, I love baseball. I want to talk about baseball. I'm just going to do it. Now I look at, younger guys like you, like Eli Fishman. I'm like, damn, like I could have been 18, like talking to Jason Dominguez and Anthony Volpe, and that was like his whole thing. Like they see him as a peer more so than, you know, Brian Hoke, who's great, walks up to Jason Dominguez. Like that's an old school reporter coming to ask a teenager questions. Eli Fishman walks up, they're just shooting the shit.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I will say it's never too late because.
Oh yeah, never.
Because you know, the one thing that I always like think about, I always kick myself in the head. I'm like, you know, when I started doing this in 2019, why couldn't I? Because I did the Yankees the whole time.
Why didn't I do it first?
Yeah, like why was I not doing the Red Sox and Dodgers and Padres and all these teams? You know that
you grow into it, you learn as you go.
Yeah, and I have to thank Jared for that, just because he's the one who started shooting my videos up. It all started with, to be honest, I think it was a Christian Vasquez grand slam against the Braves. I'm pretty sure that is the clip that started me post, because even at the beginning of the 2021 season, like at least like the first 2 weeks, I would say, I was still only doing Yankees. Like that was kind of like, unless it was the postseason, I was really just doing Yankee stuff. I mean, sometimes I would post other stuff, but it would only be like Tatis Jr. or something like that. It wouldn't be
like something like really special.
Yeah, but then that happened with Jared, and then I was like, I'm hooked. Like I want to interact with everyone, and kind of my career plan is like, obviously it would be a dream to work for a team like the Yankees, but honestly, I would get more satisfaction if I could work for a company where I get to do everything. I'm not just, you know, subjected to one team. You know, my vision is on all 30 teams, not just one, but all 30. You know, you see teams like Pirates, Brian Reynolds. You know, you have these underrated guys that people might not give enough credit, like Chris Taylor, you know, Diamondbacks, Ketel Marte. I mean,
I love Ketel.
There's so many players that, you know, thinking back at it in 2019, I'm like, man, I really could have grown so much more from that year too when I first started if I would have just expanded my horizons to all 30 teams instead of just keeping my vision so narrowly tailored to the Yankees.
Yeah, everyone in baseball media gets there eventually. So, you know, when I started, I was Yankees only, and my first article I ever wrote was about what are the Yankees going to do with Clint Frazier. It was like 2018, like, are we going to give him a chance, or do we have room for him in the outfield? What are we going to do? And I think the more I go along, the more I think I care less about just covering the Yankees and less about the team fandom and more about like, wow, like I really like Corbin Burns. Like if I miss some of the Yankee game today, I don't really care because I want to watch Corbin Burns or I want to see Fernando Tatis Jr. play. And Padres Twitter, you got to get deep into Padres Twitter because they are incredible. It's some of the most creative people I've ever met in my entire life. But so now I'm like, I watch every Padres game now just because I was like, you know what? Like I kind of like Fernando Tatis Jr. And I've met some awesome people. Stephen Woods, who hosts their morning show out there, is like, he, even to this day, he'll just text me out of random and just be like, hey man, like how's the job search going? Like, what are you doing for work? Like, when are you going to come out here? You got a place to stay, you know? Unbelievably thankful for that. Not only just because, you know, he's helped me with interviews before, but also that he just cares. He's just like, yeah, this guy is on Padres Twitter and he likes interacting with people. He likes making the same jokes we like making. So I'll just shoot him a text. And that's the best part of baseball media, man. Most of the real people who have real jobs are like super nice and super helpful. And they understand baseball is this insane grind because, you know, from posting all these clips every single day, like it gets tiresome. It gets hard on a lot of days to just keep going. And that's why everyone in baseball media is just like unbelievably supportive of everyone else.
Yeah, that's really the thing that like keeps me going. And, you know, I'm not trying to have people have sympathy for me or anything like that because it's, at the end of the day, it's my decision.
Yeah.
But there have been a lot of time, and I actually saw this from Fuzzy. If you know Fuzzy, the MLB show YouTube and stuff.
Love him.
He shares a lot of my stuff too, and we talk all the time too. He's been very helpful as well. But he said something a few weeks ago that was kind of like, you know, talking about his backstory and how he used to grind all the time. And then there's a certain point where he's just kind of like, you know, you got to kind of set time for yourself too, because that's kind of the problem that I had in 2021.
That's the problem in baseball.
Yeah. I would post
it's every day nonstop.
Yeah. And I would post content, you know, all the time, every day. I would be up from noon, 1, watching Cubs games or something like that, because a lot of Cubs games, for example, start very early in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So I would be anywhere from watching games at noon to 1 to a West Coast game that ends at midnight or 1 in the morning my time. I'd go to sleep, go to class and stuff like that, and then do it all over again. I would do that for months and
Because
months
there's
and
no
months.
break. It's every day. And that's, I always try to explain it to people. Like, I don't think it gets tiresome in like July and August when you're watching a team that's like, we're already in the playoffs basically, and we're just kind of going through the motions right now. Like, it's very hard to write about those teams. It's very hard to talk about them because what do you talk about? Well, everything's gone right so far.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all we got.
Yeah, no kidding. So I guess the moral of the story is that I took a lot of time from my family, a lot of time from my girlfriend, a lot of time from friends on campus to grind this out, which they all understood at the end of the day. But it's kind of made me realize it doesn't mean that I'm not going to keep doing this, because obviously I'm going to keep doing
Now you got to
this.
live your life too.
Yeah, but there's got to be I've got to honestly be better about being like, okay, I need to take like at least a day off every week or something like that for like a period of time, just to like doesn't mean I don't have to watch baseball, but like I can go out and do other things too, because I'm 23, I'm not even 24 yet, about to be 24, and I'm young, and I don't want to blow opportunities, because I'm not necessarily worried about like getting a job per se. I mean, because those things will come. I think I'm more just worried about grinding to the point where it's like when
It's not fun anymore.
Well, not even just that, but it's like I look back on it and I'm just like, I could have done so many other things. Like, this entire time worrying about, oh, am I going to get this job in the future? Am I going to be able to do this and that? And at that time period, I should have just been like, things will come. You can't force them. Just let them come naturally. It will come over time, especially for people that work hard. Everything will, success will come eventually. You'll be noticed if you put more time and effort into it. But I guess what I'm trying to say, without being too cliche or cheesy by any means, is that you need to take time for yourself to do other things. Because as much as I love baseball, it's not my only passion. There's other things that I also am very passionate about too.
Oh yeah. What an unbelievably real note to end the podcast. What unbelievable. You just go off on this rant for a while. And it's just like, oh yeah, like, by the way, it's not just baseball podcast, also a life podcast. We get into life stuff here.
Yeah. And I've even told people, like, because most of the stuff that I see on Twitter is obviously undeniably baseball. But then there's some times where I see tweets that have nothing to do with baseball. It's like someone like, okay, like I need a prayer or something. I need to go, like I need something because I'm going through a really hard time right now. And I've had some of those incidents where I'm just like, if you need anybody, just shoot me a DM and I will message you as soon as I can. Especially people that I've followed for quite some time and I really, really like what they have to say. And obviously, if I like what they have to say and we interact a lot, I want to help them if they need it. So,
of course,
I guess I'm just saying I'm very helping hand. It doesn't just have to be baseball related. I'm willing to talk about anything. I could probably have a podcast just talking about anything, to be honest. It wouldn't have to be podcast, or it wouldn't have to be a podcast about baseball. It could be music, video games, TV shows. I mean, I could do it. I could probably make a podcast about drinking coffee for all I care, because I like coffee. So.
You could do it, Jameson Tyone.
Yeah, no kidding. I could do like the Braves have that ice cream machine. I could just do an ice cream themed podcast or something like that. I don't know. I'm just getting really off topic right now. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This is undeniably been the longest podcast I've ever had. I think.
Oh yeah, we were on.
I've ever had was like an hour and maybe 15 minutes, maybe. This is like an hour and almost 50, but I don't regret any bit of it. And I hope
you'll have to check out
it.
the one with Max on Bleacher Creatures. The last one that I did with Max was like, it's like an hour and 45 minutes. But I remember thinking like during the time I was like, wow, like this is like the best conversation that we've ever had.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Mr. James. Is there anything else that you would like to say before we go out and close off this chapter?
I'm good, man. Thank you so much for having me, and just keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, thank you guys for anyone who's been watching this podcast. If you made it all the way through, that means the absolute world to us. I know this is a very long one, but it was very worth it in my opinion. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you subscribe, click the bell notification so you don't miss a video, and then obviously like and comment down below on what your opinions and thoughts on our podcast were. And we'll see you guys later.